Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brett Murphy. I'm the chairman of HEAT. HEAT is a political action committee that stands for Americans for Honesty, Ethics, Accountability, and Transparency in our federal government. As I stand before the Capitol building today, I would first like to say we are very sorry, Mr. President, that your brother passed away. We will keep you in our prayers and pray for your family. I'm here today to talk to you about some things that I've seen posted on Facebook and some comments that I've heard from the Republican base. First and foremost, let's talk about the Postal Service. The Postal Service has been around longer than the Constitution of the United States. It was a way the colonists formulated a way to communicate with each other. After that, we went to the Pony Express, but the Postal Service has been the bedrock of the United States Foundation relative to communicating with your mom and your dad and your grandparents, and your grandparents used to send you birthday cards. Right now, the Postal Service is in disarray. President Trump dismissed the prior Postmaster General, placed one of his colleagues or cronies or large political donors in that position, and he has decimated the Postal Service. Currently, they are removing 671 postal sorting machines. The Postal Service has sent notification to 46 states saying that they probably won't be able to count ballots, which would disenfranchise possibly millions of people. President Trump himself said, we may not know for days, for weeks, for months, for years, what the actual vote is. So I'm here today before you, asking you to step up, support the Postal Service, call your senator, call your House of Representatives, and tell them not to decimate the Postal Service. Another point I have is, technically it's against the law. The statute is 18 U.S.C. 1701 through 18 U.S.C. 1703. The first one, 1701, talks about the disruption of mail generally, which means that no one, not an officer of the post office, not the President of the United States, can interfere with the delivery of mail to postal patrons or to return mail into the Postal Service that would go to the Elections Board. 1701 allows a penalty of jail not more than 6 months. It's considered a misdemeanor. 18 USC 1702 is a more, a more comprehensive, a more punishable, a more criminal offense. It says also that no officer of the post office, no postal employee, no president, doesn't say president, but it infers that no one can interfere or destroy or delay or corrupt the Postal Service. You're happy to look them up. You can go to house.gov, which is the government website. You can look at the regulations. You can look at the statutes. You can type in federal law and type in 18 USC 1701, 1702, and 1703, and you'll see why it is so important for us to stand up for the Postal Service. Most of us have a relationship with our postal people, our mail delivery people. We see them almost every day. We go down to get the mail, the postman's there, we say hi. Many of us give them Christmas gifts. We give them cards because we know it's their birthday or there's a celebration. Those people deserve, much like all of the other essential employees, the faith and the confidence that we as United States citizens, as US voters, will be able to get our mail. We depend on them. We often don't even think about them. We just go down and check the mail. Sometimes it's not fun because there's bills and newspapers and junk mail. But it's part of the mail, people. It comes, and our postal carrier brings it. There's been some discussion about, well, the equipment's old, and that's why we're getting rid of it. We're getting rid of it 3 months before, 60 days or 80 days before the most important presidential election in United States history. We talked before about the despotism of America. President Trump is a despot, and you can look that word up. It's just a person who wants all of the power that's not granted by sovereign immunity to the other branches of government. His way of taking care of that was the Republicans won the Senate, but Donald Trump controls Mitch McConnell. He appointed 248 justices in the Supreme Court, in the lower division courts, level 3 associate judges, in courts of maritime and transportation. I apologize, I don't know as much about that. I just know the number. But he controls the judicial part. He interfered with judicial renderings from A.G. Barr. He pardoned criminals that were sent to jail by Republican administrations. Ron Blagojevich, the governor from Illinois, who tried to sell Barack Obama's Senate seat for money when Mr. Obama, former President Obama, was elected to the White House. There's a lot of stuff going on. So he's stepped into the judicial department. Look what he did to Roger Stone. Roger Stone was one of his consultants, was convicted for lying to Congress. He was convicted and sentenced to jail. And President Trump said, no, you don't have to go. It'll be okay. You're my guy. That's not the way politics works. Unfortunately, in the era of Trumpism, that is how politics works. Trumpism is defined as all politics rotating around Trump. Trump's idea, he thinks, is supreme law. Who else does that? Dictators, tyrants, kings. I did a piece that you can see on our Facebook page, Heat in Politics or @Heat Government, that talked about King George III, who was the ruler of England when the colonists declared their independence, and President Donald J. Trump. If you read the words in the Declaration of Independence, it is impossible in your mind not to think that we're in the same or mostly similar situation. You know, this was an unprepared speech. There was a lot of conversation about this yesterday on the Facebook page when I posted that. I've been called everything in the book, and it's okay. There's been a lot of people who have questioned my ability, but I will tell you this. I've been around a long time. I'm 53 years old. I did serve in politics very briefly, just in a city council role, and then I moved on. Been a paramedic for 31 years. In that 31 years, I moved into executive level management in the hospital. I owned an ambulance company in Sedalia, Missouri. Many of you know that. After I transitioned from healthcare, I went to work for Harley Davidson and became an executive with Harley Davidson, and finally the assistant general manager of Harley Davidson in Glendale. I retired at 53 and started this political action committee because I'm worried about my children and my grandchildren and what they're looking at in the current environment of divisiveness and politics that don't make sense. We have a Republican Party that is so tied to the president that there's no hope that anything the president doesn't want or that's not good for the American people but benefits President Trump will ever change. There's a Democratic Party that passed the CARES Act 13 weeks ago. In that CARES Act, there was money for you. There was $1,200 additional for you. There was money for the post office, $25 billion for the post office. It wasn't a bipartisan bill. It was on strict partisan lines. The Democrats passed it. The Republicans in the House of Representatives all voted no. Then Mitch McConnell didn't even take it up. They proposed their own bill. In their bill, it really outlines things for businesses and the increase of payroll taxes, which, by the way, is what helps fund Social Security. So if your grandma is on Social Security and we stop the payroll tax, and Trump said if he's elected, he'll never do it again, or he'll repeal it, where's that money going to come from? So grandma and grandpa, and maybe your mom and dad can have their Social Security benefits that they worked their entire lives for. It will be gone. It did say it would come out of the general fund. You guys are smart. When it comes out of the general fund, where does that money go? It becomes a deficit. We've become a country of deficits. Republicans have done it. Democrats have done it. I don't know how to fix it. I'm not here as a genius to tell you what I can or cannot do or what the government can or cannot do to fix the deficit, but we should work on it. So the last thing I'd like to say about the despotism is let's talk about the legislature. As we talk about the legislature, the two parties need to come back together, sit down, and decide what is going to be the best plan for the United States. I don't know if it's the Democratic plan. I don't know if it's the Republican plan, but they can come together and split the difference. I know that the House of Representatives went and met with Steve Mnuchin, who is the Secretary of Treasury, and they had multiple meetings, I believe 12, and they talked about what they could do. The Democrats came down $1 trillion, asked the Republicans to come down $1 trillion and meet in the middle, and it fell apart and they went their separate ways. Shortly after that, that's when President Trump said on national TV that I don't want to fund the post office because that will help with mail-in voting. And if there's mail-in voting, then there's no chance that the Republicans will win. That's not what this is about, Mr. President. It's about the health and safety of the American people. Right now, we are in the worst pandemic in 100 years. We currently have 170,000. Let me say that again. 170,000 people who have died from the coronavirus. I still hear people say, oh, well, the coronavirus is a hoax or the numbers are not right. Let me tell you something. Being in healthcare for 31 years, I've seen pandemics. I was the regional chairman during our last pandemic, and we knew what we had to do. We knew the medicine we had to put together. We knew that we needed respirators, and we did it. We had a national plan. So, Mr. President, please get it together. Vice President Pence, I'm talking to you as well. House of Representatives, who have been complicit without saying a word about the 170,000 dead Americans. You know, this is as bad as any war that we've ever had. And I'm talking about a war of arms where Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq, we're getting to a point where this could get as bad as World War I and II. Do we need that, Americans? I think not. That's my answer. I think not. So I stand before you today and ask you again, stand up and vote. Vote by mail. If you're comfortable with putting on a mask and standing in line, that's fine. Go stand in line, but be safe. Please distance yourself 6 feet from others. Wear a mask when you can. Wash your hands frequently. If they have hand sanitizer or alcohol, rub that on your hands. Keep your hands clean. Don't touch your face. If you're exposed, quarantine yourself. Do the simple, patriotic things that the United States requires to stay the United States. There's a lot of conversation about, well, if Vice President Biden gets elected, then China will take over the world. No, it won't. We have the strongest military in the world. We're not scared of China, and neither is Vice President Trump. Neither is Kamala Harris. Neither is Vice President Pence. No one is scared of China. No one is scared of Russia, except for President Trump, who again announced today that he'd like to have a meeting with President Putin of Russia before the election. There's been a lot of talk. The National Intelligence Agency, which is part of the Trump administration, has said that Russia is trying to interfere with our election. I think many of the trolls that I see on Facebook that are giving disinformation about the pandemic, about mail-in voting, about everything in the world that you guys know in your mind is not true, that is conspiracies, are all working to undermine the democracy of the United States. If we disenfranchise voters, if we don't let a bunch of people wear masks or have a national mask mandate, then people will die. And that's okay. That's what they're saying. It is what it is. What the heck is that? If I was in the emergency room with a patient who was suffering from a cardiac issue, and we did everything in the world we could and coded him for an hour and a half because he kept coming in and out of a palpable rhythm or a palpable pulse, what do you think would happen to me if I said, oh, it is what it is. It is what it is. He died. That's not right. That's not ethical. That's not honest. We have no accountability. President Trump said that himself. He was asked by a reporter, President Trump, are you going to take accountability for what's happening with this pandemic? No, it's the China virus. It doesn't matter where it came from. It matters how we take care of it. I'm sick of hearing the word China virus. It's just a racial or ethnic slur. I've heard a lot of stuff about Black Lives Matter. Again, those are racial and ethnic slurs. A black life has the same value as my life, the same value as a white life, as an Asian life. We're not here to argue about whose lives are more important than others. We all have a value, and we all bring something to the table. If someone commits a crime, they should be held accountable. That's what the rule of law says. The rule of law has been around since Aristotle, which was 383 BC. Before Christ was born, Aristotle pondered about government and laws and came up with the rule of law that said no one is above the rule of law. Not the king, not the ruler, not whatever title the leader may have. He's still not above the law. Jump forward, 1,800 years, or 1,300 years, when the British signed the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta was taken to the king, and it said, the nobles and you are not above the law. If you pass a law that says that you can't do this, then you can't do this or we're going to hold you accountable. That's what the rule of law means. But our current president doesn't believe in the rule of law. He believes that he can do whatever he wants because he can't be indicted because he's a sitting president. He can't be criminally charged because he's a sitting president. But you see on the news all the time, all of the things that are coming. New York State has subpoenaed his records, and the Supreme Court has allowed them to because President Trump is under criminal investigation for insurance fraud and bank fraud. You know, if the Postal Service thing falls through, the Postmaster General is going to be looking at criminal charges. And when President Trump is out of office, whether it be January 20th of 2021 or down the road, I guarantee you he'll be facing charges as well. So that's all I have for you today. I know what I say doesn't make you happy. I don't frankly care. I'm here for the American people who have the right to vote by mail, to stand up to the president, to hold the president accountable, and to vote for whoever they want. Thank you and good day.